Good morning, everybody. If I can encourage you to come and take a seat. If we can just start with a prayer. You can just be still for a moment. Heavenly Father, we come into your presence and we give you thanks for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to come together and to learn from you. And we just pray that you bless us, that reinvigorate us, help us to make connections. We pray for Paul, who's going to be sharing with his teaching this morning. And we just give you thanks that you are here in our midst. Give us wisdom in how to use the things that we are learning this morning by your Spirit. Amen. I'm going to ask Graham to come up because we've been given a wonderful welcome. Can I just say this, Graham, from your church? And I'm just going to quickly say, before I let you, I've got the microphone, you can tell, can't you? But Graham, who is the minister here, Joy, who's helped with the tech, Adrian, Michael with the logistics, Scylla and Rosemary with the catering. We've just been made so warm and welcome here, and to thank everyone who's made this possible this morning.
Yes, I'm just here very briefly just to welcome you here, St Saviour's, and just to say it is lovely to have you along, and we're delighted to be able to host this here today. GTCC in Guildford, but also it is really close to our heart here at St Saviour's, and actually I know that is mirrored across all the chaplaincies in various places that you're involved with. For those of you who haven't been here before, just to let you know, the restrooms, the bathrooms are out the door there and just down the corridor there. There won't be, well, we really hope there won't be a fire, but if there is an exit down here, and clearly out the back where you came from before. But also, I just wanted to say one of the reasons we're delighted to have you here is the impact that you have in so many different places. Lots of people say to me as vicar here, "Oh, Graham, thanks so much for all you're doing as vicar, making a wonderful difference." And sometimes I feel like I'm not sure I'm really the person making the difference, partly because I spend almost all my meetings with people who are Christians. People who are here in churches, people involved with things here. And then actually it's people such as yourselves who are in some ways, well, really making a difference in all the different contexts that you are. You're serving people, you're loving people, you're being Jesus' hands and feet in the context where you are. And I'm incredibly grateful for all that you do. So hence, it's a joy to have you here today, and we hope and pray that you have a wonderful time together. And having said that, I will hand back to Noel and Paul as well, and we'll lead you through the rest of today. But great to have you here, and you're very, very welcome.
Thank you, Graham. We also have our patron here this morning, Michael Mormoniu, who's the Lord Lieutenant of Surrey. Would you just come up and say hello?
Noel, thank you. Noel seized me by the coffee stall and said, if you want to talk, you can for 10 seconds. So I will keep it very brief. But I am very pleased to be with you all this morning. GTCC does so much excellent work. I'm not a chaplain, but I am a lay canon at the cathedral. I am a patron of the living at our local church. So I hope you won't hold that against me, that I'm not a chaplain. But I have seen in practice some of the work that you do for the borough, whether it's Street Angels or in a host of other areas. It is fantastic what you do, and you're such a support to so many people. And I would suggest at this time that support is needed more than ever. And my 30 seconds is now up, so I will sit down. But thank you.
I didn't know I was that scary. Paul, can I hand over to you? It's a delight to have you with us this morning.
Thank you so much, Noel, and thank you for your welcome. It's really brilliant to be here today, and I'm excited by the day, and I want to tell you that I'm also excited about all the opportunities for ministry and mission together, and it's a great joy for me to be serving alongside Noel and Susanna, who you'll meet later on, in trying to develop the chaplaincy element of Guildford Town Chaplaincy. I want to start with two questions. I'm going to answer the first, and you can answer the second. So I want to know who's here today. Michael mentioned folks from GTCC, which is absolutely correct, but I think there's quite a diversity of people in our midst today. So let's see if we can identify folks. Raise a hand if you are a workplace chaplain, whether lay or ordained. Okay. You're a church member or you're a church leader interested in finding out more about workplace chaplaincy for yourself, your congregation, and your community. Excellent. And I must take the opportunity, a big shout out to Pauline. Raise a hand, Pauline. Pauline has come all the way from Billericay, which is not in Ireland, which is where I thought it was when I first heard the place mentioned, but is in Essex. And I worked there. I was a curate there in 1980. And I saw something in a magazine a month ago about Pauline and chaplaincy. I thought, I'll just give her a ring. And here she is today. Kudos to you. Okay, who else? You're from another town centre chaplaincy. Fantastic, you're really welcome. It's just great that you could join us. You're a student on the Darson Foundations in Ministry course. Great, thank you for coming, that's excellent. You are here to just explore, tentatively maybe, whether God might be leading you to become a chaplain. Yep. A few hands going up. Not shooting up high, but a few hands going up. Excellent. You serve with GTCC as staff, trustee, street angels, community angels. Yep. And maybe you're an employed chaplain, maybe in a hospital or hospice, school or prison or for the police or whatever it is. You're an employed chaplain. Yep, one or two hands go up. Okay, I think that's probably covered most people, and that's the question I wanted to answer. What about the one for you? When my son Luke was about 5, a friend of ours used to come to our house very regularly, and he would always greet her with these words: "Why are you here?" I'd like you please to introduce yourselves to those around your tables and ask that question. Why are you here? What have you come for? What is it you hope to gain today? Just have some time introducing yourselves and meeting those at your tables, please. Okay, let's draw our conversations to a close. Let's draw our conversations to a close. I hope that's helpful just to get to know those at your tables and to hear from one another what you're really here for and what you're hoping to gain from our day. In this first session, what I want to do, I want to give a theological rationale for this ministry, for chaplaincy, and then I want to tell you how I was led into doing this. So, the starting point for me, the theological foundation for me, is the Missio Dei, which is a Latin phrase that articulates the belief that mission is God's mission, and we are God's instrument in that mission. As the missiologist David Bosch said, it is not the Church of God who has a mission, but the God of mission who has a church. So God is active in our world, and we join in with what God is doing as fellow workers with a missionary God. But however do we do this? It is complex. There are no easy answers. And the dilemma, for me, is encapsulated in this question I once heard. How do you reach a generation that listens with its eyes and thinks with its feelings? So much of what we do in church is lost in translation, isn't it? Many do not know what we're on about. Our message is misunderstood. The gospel needs to be interpreted. But I would say there's nothing confusing about chaplaincy, because it communicates clearly that we care, that there is a spiritual world, and there is hope. And it is one of the best ways to engage with our local communities. So let's look at a biblical passage that endorses why we serve in this way. And on your tables, you have paper copies of the reading from Acts 17. They're not enough for everyone, but I know many of you have got Bibles with you, or you have the Bibles on your phone. And what we're going to do now is we're going to have that reading read to us. We're going to start with, I'm going to take the microphone down to...
A reading from Acts. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. So he reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace, day by day, with those who happened to be there. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate with him. Some of them asked, "What is this babbler trying to say?" Others remarked, "He seems to be advocating foreign gods." They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting of the Areopagus, where they said to him, "May we know what this new teaching is that you are presenting? You are bringing some strange ideas to our ears, and we would like to know what they mean." All the Athenians and the foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas.
Now we're going to hand over to Will.
Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, "People of Athens, I see that in every way you are very religious. For as I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, 'To an unknown God.' So you are ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I am going to proclaim to you. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth, and he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As some of your own poets have said, we are his offspring."
Thank you so much. Now Vladimiro.
Therefore, since we were God's offsprings, we should not think that the divine being is like gold or silver or stone, an image made by human design and skill. In the past, God overlooked such ignorance, but now he commands all people everywhere to repent. For he has set a day when he will judge the world with justice by the man he has appointed. He has given proof of this to everyone by raising him from the dead. When they heard about the resurrection of death, some of them sneered, but others said, "We want to hear you again at this subject." At that Paul left the council. Some of the people became followers of Paul and believed. Among them was Dionysius, a member of the Areopagus, also a woman named Damaris, and a number of others.
Thank you so much to those who read the scriptures for us. So let's look together now at this passage. So Paul had traveled from Berea, where the good news was received eagerly. And in Athens, his purpose seems primarily one of waiting. He's not exactly, if you like, an asylum seeker, but he's certainly fleeing opposition from Thessalonica. He is displaced. He is surrounded by history and memorials to a glorious past. In the colonnaded marketplace, he's walking in the footsteps of Zeno, Socrates, Epicurus. And his problem is twofold. On the one hand, there's a profusion of idols. On the other, a secularism, with Epicureans thinking religion is just empty superstition, and Stoics misreading what Paul is saying and think he's proclaiming a new foreign god. Beyond this, we see a culture which appears more interested in being entertained than convicted by ideas. Look at verse 21. All the Athenians and foreigners who lived there spent their time doing nothing but talking about and listening to the latest ideas. So how does Paul respond? Verse 16. While Paul was waiting for them in Athens, he was greatly distressed to see that the city was full of idols. Paul finds himself distressed in the marketplace by what he sees and observed. He is exposed to a culture of idolatry which offends him. A view of the world which sees all religion as empty superstition. A challenge in communicating the good news of the resurrection in a way that will make any sense to his audience. In the arena of Socrates and Plato, Paul is a peddler of foreign religion. Verse 18, he is a mere babbler. Can you imagine being called that? The word conveys an image of people scavenging on a rubbish dump. That's what it means. The gospel is seen as trash, and an audience who desire entertainment above any kind of commitment. So here we see what motivates, drives, and fuels Paul in a city full of idols is that people were not worshipping the living God. So what Paul does now is he goes to 3 different spaces. The first space is the comfort zone. Verse 17. He reasoned in the synagogue with both Jews and God-fearing Greeks. Paul was called to be the apostle to the Gentiles. And as there were only 2 groups of people in the world at that time, Jews and everyone else, Paul was called to be the apostle to everyone else. So he goes to the synagogue to meet with Jews and God-fearing Greeks. It's a strange place to go to if you want to tell Gentiles about Jesus. But Paul did what we all do. He spent time with the people he knew. He went where he was comfortable. And we do the same, don't we, with people like us. The first space is the comfort zone. The synagogue is the safe space, the place of common language, shared faith and majority. But as we all know today, mission cannot only happen in the first space, expressed today through Christians gathering in church with people like us, who believe like us, have the same convictions as us, use the same language as us, and where we invite those who come. That is the first space. The second space is the marketplace. Verse 17, Paul reasoned in a synagogue with Jews and God-fearing Greeks, as well as in the marketplace day by day with those who happen to be there. Paul enters their space, the market space, by his own volition. Friends, your most powerful place of engagement, the space you need to live in, is the second space, the marketplace with those who happen to be there. This is where you are Monday to Friday. It's your day-to-day life. It's a space you know well. Many there are desperate to find credible voices, and yet the dilemma we face is the language and culture in the first space, church, can make us irrelevant in the second space, the marketplace. which means we have no longer anything to offer and cannot communicate effectively. And yet people there are very open to having spiritual conversations. And then there's the third space, by invitation only. Verse 18. A group of Epicurean and Stoic philosophers began to debate. Some asked, what is this babbler trying to say? Others remarked, he seems to be advocating foreign gods. They said this because Paul was preaching the good news about Jesus and the resurrection. And note the next 4 words, please. Underline those 4 words, please. Inscribe them on your heart, please. Then they took him. The third space is where those who live invite you to go with them. Paul is taken to the Areopagus. He's invited to enter their space, to enter the conversation. And this, friends, is what happens with chaplaincy, where you are invited in to someone else's space. And as I know some of you would say, it is the most exciting space. Paul moves from being a tourist to a guest. He's going where he's never been before. He's unprepared. It's unlike any moment he ever experienced. And I had a similar experience when I was in Derby, and I was approached by the casino there about chaplaincy. So I walked down to the casino. And as I was about to walk in, I felt very self-conscious. I thought, someone's going to see me walking in here. Oh, what's up with the vicar? He's got gambling habits. It really made me feel a little bit nervous. I went in there, but I will say it did feel like a foreign land to me. Verses 19 to 21. Then they took him and brought him to a meeting in the Areopagus, where they said, may we know what this new teaching is you're presenting. You're bringing some strange ideas to our ears. We'd like to know what they mean. Paul is in an entirely different space, where he can't have a first space conversation about Moses and Isaiah, because they don't know anything about that. So what does he do? Verse 22. Paul then stood up in the meeting of the Areopagus and said, people of Athens. Here is Paul's defining moment. He is no longer speaking to the people of Jerusalem. He is now speaking to the people of Athens. In the first space, Paul would have said, destroy your idols. But in the third space, he says, I see that in every way you are very religious. So what does Paul do? He commends them for their inventiveness and innovation. He's no longer interpreting the scriptures, he's interpreting the culture. He's not extracting truth from the words of God, but extracting truth from human experience. Verse 23. For as I walked around and looked carefully at objects of worship, I even found an altar with this inscription, to an unknown God. So you're ignorant of the very thing you worship, and this is what I'm going to proclaim to you. Paul had been distressed by what he saw. But what we know is that this was more than a casual glance. Something remarkable occurs. While Paul, as a Jew, would have been deeply distressed by the idolatry he saw, now he says, I walked around and looked carefully at your objects of worship. The choice is there for us too. We can respond in a variety of ways to things that distress us out there. We can turn aside in disgust. We can shake our heads and walk away. We can be cynical. We can feel overwhelmed and powerless to effect change. Or we can seek to be present and offer something positive. And this is Paul's response. He chooses to look deeply into the very source of his distress. And it is as he sees what's in front of him that he encounters the altar of the unknown God. A God there to ensure every eventuality is covered. His looking carefully brings him to a place where he discovers what might be a place of contact or resonance with his audience, an opportunity to invite them to explore the possibility of good news. Paul knows the fingerprint of God is there. He's not taking Jesus to these people. Instead, Paul makes clear that Jesus is one breath away from everyone on the planet. Paul is speaking to the Athenians in the city named after a pagan goddess of sexuality, Athena, at the Areopagus or Mars Hill, named after a pagan god of war. Paul wants them to know they're already in the story of God who made the world and has given them life. And as chaplains, we're called to help people realize they are already in the story of God, in an ocean of God's presence, but maybe unaware that he is everywhere. In verses 26 and 27, Paul is saying that every single person in the planet is where they are so they can have the best opportunity to seek and find God. And then in verse 34, we read about the people who've become followers and believed. You may not have thought much about these names. There was Dionysius, Damaris, and a number of others. But here is the challenge. The moment we have a community, when a Dionysius meets God, church members get nervous because Dionysius is named after a pagan god of drunkenness. So maybe we'll tell him to change his name because then he'll fit into the first space. But the moment we do that, he becomes irrelevant in the third space and can't help his friends find Jesus. Here's the challenge. As my former bishop, Alistair Redfern, said, churches tend to retreat into becoming gated suburban spaces dedicated to the well-being of their members and inviting others to be converted into dwelling in such a safe space. But the true task of the church is to go out into the mix and messiness of the market, acting out a generosity that makes a transformative difference. What about an amen to that? What do you think of that? That says it so well. Going out into the mix and messiness of the marketplace, acting out a generosity that makes a transformative difference. This is chaplaincy in action. And this is when we're invited into the third space. What I'd like you to do now, please, is reconnect with your friends around your table and look at this question. In what ways does your church engage in mission with the local community? In the first space, people coming in, that's the church building. In the second space, that's the marketplace. And in the third space, by invitation only. Please discuss this together for a few moments around your tables. If you could be drawing your conversations to a close. Okay, let's come back together again. We'll come back together. There will be a time for questions later on after our second session, but I do hope that you'll take this mission idea home with you. Every church, I would say, is involved in mission in some way in the first space, in their building. Many, some are involved in mission in the second space. Very, very few involved in mission in the third space. Please take that home with you, share that with others, get a conversation going. It will be invaluable, I tell you. That is the theology bit for you. I want to now talk about the practical bit, about how this has worked out for me. Because as I said a moment ago, we can respond in many different ways to a context that distresses us, that generates sadness and anger, maybe moves us at a deep level. Chaplaincy is one response, and for me it has been a huge surprise and a wonderful blessing. I've always known about chaplaincy. I knew about it when I was ordained in 1980. I've always known it's been undertaken by Christians and other faiths. But I never wanted to get involved. I sort of was put off, rightly or wrongly, by the phrase that was going around in those days about chaplaincy, industrial mission. It gave a bad image, really, for me, and just didn't draw me in. Traditionally, chaplaincy developed in education, prisons, hospitals, and the military. to support those who might otherwise be detached from the congregational life of the church. This gave rise to public sector chaplaincy, jointly resourced by churches and public sector organizations. Other sectors of chaplaincy were in industry and commerce, railways, ports, agriculture, the emergency services, courts of justice. Chaplaincy to groups that might otherwise be untouched by the mission of the church, including to those who are unfamiliar or disenchanted with traditional approaches to religion, led to an engagement with wider society, in this case with the economic life in an industrial and post-industrial era. In recent years, this has changed dramatically, and new areas of commercial life touched by chaplaincy now include industry, retail, business, transport, leisure, and in community. So you've got shopping centres and supermarkets, you've got theatres and sports, you've got airports and train stations. And it's really quite extraordinary. It's all over the place. My involvement began when I was appointed vicar of this church, St. Peter's in the City, in the centre of Derby in 2009. And one reason I accepted the role was because of the city centre location. Stunning. You couldn't put it in a better place. And these words in the parish profile, that's the brief that you're given if you're inquiring about a job. The church sees its mission as extending to those who live, work, shop, or pass through the parish, but with whom we have little contact or no contact. Now, I knew of a couple of town centre chaplains, so I went with colleagues to visit. And in light of what we learned, we decided to explore it further. If anything was to develop, we needed approval from the people that matter. So, partnership and permission is key if you're going to get anything going. You have to have those two elements. People to work with you, to join with you in the conversation, to say, I sign up with you, but also permission. And we had permission here from all these groups. We had permission from, if you like, the city centre management. We had permission from organisations that were running things there. We had permission from the church leaders around the whole county. We had permission from others who could say yes or no to us. I mean, I went into Westfield, which is a bit like the Friary here in Guildford, but much, much bigger. And, you know, I went thinking, this is a make or break conversation. I went armed with my laptop and a video from a town centre chaplaincy. I never had to show it. She just said yes, straight away. These were important occasions that would only be realised when there was this unanimous support. So all these groups said yes to the proposal of starting Derby City Centre Chaplaincy. Where do you go to start? How do you start something? To begin with, I went to a few shops and I went to ask a chap, and I went to say, would you like a chaplain on a regular weekly visit maybe to support your staff? What about that as an idea? I went to supermarkets, I went to a department store, I went to a bank, I went to a coffee shop, I went to a pharmacy, and when I went into the pharmacy, I was directed to the manager, and you know, I had a sort of, you know how in America they have elevators and have like an elevator pitch. I had like a 40-second pitch to try and explain chaplaincy before someone's eyes glazed over and they walked away to do something more important. I was halfway through, even less, of my 40-second pitch to the manager in a pharmacy, and she interrupted me, and she said, and about time too. Never met her. She'd been going through all sorts of personal stuff and staff stuff, and was thrilled that we were going to help and support them. So everyone said yes. We hoped there would be interest, but there was more. There was more. There was a real sense of, we need your help, please. You know, the days of HR providing fantastic support for staff, generally speaking, are over. Maybe it's a confidential 0800 or 0300 phone line or whatever it may be. So I appointed a few chaplains, I gave them minimal training, I set up ongoing support, I prayed for them and sent them out, and 3 months later I went back and I said to these same managers, how was it? Everyone said, please continue. So The time was right. We created a website, we printed publicity, provided a jacket, because you have to have a uniform of a jacket and a polo shirt, and off they went. We devised a mission statement, Derby City Centre Chaplaincy, to express the love of Jesus in public, personal and prophetic ways through a team of chaplains offering encouragement and support to all people in their workplaces. And to begin with, we just focused on retail. But after a while, others heard about it, and the sectors expanded, and there were more and more sectors. So now, what happens there now? You have retail and business in the middle column. You have education with local schools supporting staff. You have social care with care homes. There's arts and entertainment, like with a theatre. There's the city council. There's homeless centres. There is so much going on now in chaplaincy, in all these places. When you create an organization, you've got to really come to grips with who are you? What are you about? What does it mean, this organization? So what we did was we created some values, the values of the organization. It is distinctively Christian. It is available to those of any faith or no faith at all. It is intentionally missional. We go where we are invited. It is ecumenical, with volunteers from all the different denominations in the churches. It is free and confidential to those it serves. And it's committed to excellence and ongoing development, with training days like this, 3 training days a year. Shortly after this, I was appointed principal chaplain of the existing organisation, Workplace Chaplaincy in Derbyshire. And this opened up new sectors for me. The police, we had the police headquarters very nearby. Police chaplaincy, fire and rescue, transport with trains in the airport, industry with Rolls-Royce and Bombardier, sport with Derby County and Chesterfield football clubs, and non-league clubs, Derbyshire County Cricket Club, and to agriculture, to the farmers. I then began expanding the ministry around the county, speaking at churches together groups, Anglican deanery synods and clergy chapters. And we ended up with chaplains from different denominations serving in so many different sectors. I mean, you may not be able to see all these different logos, but I mean, it's so extraordinary, the places that accepted us. If I mention maybe one or two, Sports Direct. We've all heard of Sports Direct. You may know that a few years ago it was in the news for not such good reasons. Staff dissatisfaction, staff not being treated well. It was bad news, that was. And, Mike Ashley is the chair, but we were allowed to go in and provide chaplains. Gideon's produced some Polish-speaking Bibles for us, and we went in there to support the staff. It's a tremendous opportunity. DHU may not mean much to you. DHU stands for Derbyshire Health United, but I will tell you what it stands for, and then you'll know straight away. It's the 111 phone line. And here are people, call handlers, under great stress, yeah? The desperate phone calls. And one of my chaplains worked at DHU and asked one day to see the chief executive. That's confidence for you. And said, we need a chaplain. And they have a chaplain. You see others there. M&S, the chaplain was able to go around M&S, not on the shop floor, but only in the staff restaurant. Rolls-Royce, a lot of work in industry supporting chaplains there, and so on. When I left, when I left Derby as the vicar and lead for this, and retired to Guildford 3.5 years ago, I had appointed 150 voluntary workplace chaplains. And I'd set up 15 town centre chaplaincies around the county. So this just shows the growth of a movement. There wasn't just enthusiasm, there wasn't just energy, there was vision. And there was a real sense that this is necessary, because wherever there is a workplace, there can be a chaplain. Wherever there's a workplace, there can be a chaplain. Here are some key principles that emerged from this. Firstly, engaging with the local community. You get to know those working in your community in many unexpected ways. I met people not because I was the vicar. When there was a tragic situation at Derby City Council where I was one of 3 chaplains and a member of staff had gone missing, subsequently we learnt had taken his life, the chief executive gave me his office for the week so that I and my colleagues could meet with staff in distress. When Derbyshire Police and the fire services needed to appoint a lead police and fire chaplain, I sat with the chief constable and the chief fire officer. Not something I'd ever do as a vicar, let me tell you. But as the lead chaplain, you're there in the conversation. One danger that church leaders face, and Graham said it in his few words before we began, is that church leaders, and I know there are many here today, face being taken too far into the church and out of the community. But what I've found with my determination to be a chaplain and to be out there was that chaplaincy left me well placed on the threshold between church and society. And that, I think, is a great place to be. Uncomfortable sometimes, but a great place to be. Empowering the laity. Over 80% of the chaplains were lay, and of these, many were retired. This is, let me tell you, a wonderful ministry for the retired. I won't ask you to raise your hands, but I'm retired, and I know there are a few others here. It is a wonderful ministry for the retired. And I would go so far as to say, it's a gift. It's a gift. It's not easy retiring sometimes. It's a challenge. It's a huge contrast. But what a gift to have this as a ministry. Those who are retired bring in a lot of life experience and wisdom. And they do have maybe just a little bit of time. In one parish, they came up with a really Anglican model of chaplaincy, which is interesting. I preached and commissioned 8 chaplains in this parish to serve in retail, healthcare, a school, and industry. The vicar, he couldn't stop smiling. He supported them and supervised them. The chaplaincy provided the training and the jackets. And off they went into that parish setting to be involved in mission. Empowering the laity. Thirdly, supporting one another. I love a phrase that one of the chaplains came up with. He said that one of the things he so loves about our training days, and we had days like this with 100 plus coming, he says, I love this chaplaincy community. I'd never thought of such a thing. It's a chaplaincy community. And we had these days 3 times a year, and they were times of great inspiration and great networking. Training is important. It is crucial. But a moment ago I said to you I gave minimal training to those who first went out. And the reason is you do not need to have too much. And I loved the phrase that the Bishop of Derby said. He talked about what he so liked about the chaplaincy that we were developing. And he's an academic. He's been involved in all sorts of training and all sorts of stuff. And he said, what I like is this. You give a jacket and not a certificate. You give a jacket and not a certificate. Finance. It need not be an obstacle. Many things do fall by the wayside, don't they, because of finance. We can have all sorts of wonderful ideas in our churches and think, well, we just can't afford it. But let me tell you, finance need not be an obstacle. There is minimal finance. Of course, there are jackets, polo shirts. There is training. But there's not a lot. Maybe if it's a local church, you have to add something to your website. But don't let money stop it happening. And lastly, multi-faith questions have not been an issue. You can imagine the city of Derby, especially, many different faiths. We never had one issue about multi-faith issues. we ended up talking to people from other faiths. And if someone from another faith wanted to speak to a chaplain of their faith, that was absolutely fine. And we had a link with the Multi-Faith Centre at Derby University and would simply pass on that referral to meet with that chaplain. There are many other principles I could mention. But I will say, don't let some of these stop you doing what needs to be done. Multi-faith questions have not been an issue. Okay, if I can invite you to come back to your places, please. You're welcome to bring back with you your coffee and biscuits. Okay, hope you had a good break, and it's been good to talk to a few of you, and just so you know, I'm going to just stay here as long as the church is open this afternoon, so I'm not rushing away, but I just live a few minutes away, so happy to have as many conversations as I can. I'm sure that I know that Noel and Susanna will echo those words as well. What I want to do now in this session is look at authentic chaplaincy and the characteristics of authentic chaplaincy. 9 out of 10 people will not be in church on Sunday. 9 out of 10 people will be at work on Monday, there or thereabouts. This is why chaplaincy is so important. The whole world is potentially a place for encountering God, and the opportunities for chaplaincy are huge. Chaplains who serve beyond our churches and cathedrals have a key part to play in helping people discover God's presence in the world. And yet they're sometimes perceived as being on the periphery of church life and not its centre. And if you're a chaplain, you may sense that as well. But I want to say that's okay, for the ministry of Jesus shows that life on the periphery can be the centre of activity. Jesus pointed out that spirit and truth are not always found in the obvious places of the Holy Mountain or in a temple-centered Jerusalem. He made his presence felt on the periphery by healing a Canaanite's daughter in Tyre and talking to a Samaritan woman in Sychar. If church life is often seen as the bread and butter of ministry, perhaps chaplaincy is the jam. Chaplains are embedded in the nation's social structures, serving in a multitude of sectors. In fact, if you add together all the chaplains in the UK, the number is more than 15,000. And one reason for the peripheral image of chaplaincy is, I think, that churches and cathedrals are visible hubs of church life, like a glorious building like this. Whereas the work of the chaplain is more discreet. It's often one-to-one. And yet, because chaplains meet people at crucial moments in their lives, and often when they're in a low place, and it may just be a brief conversation, such encounters can be transformative, resulting in better mental health, positive changes for the person in the workplace or in their home life, maybe too a clearer understanding of faith. So there are 3 strands I want to weave together now that are key, I believe, to authentic chaplaincy. This is not one of them. Although loitering is what chaplains do a lot of, isn't that right? We do loiter a lot, don't we? And in this time, I want to refer to this research, quite small on the screen. It came from the Cardiff Centre for Chaplaincy Studies, and I'm going to refer to this research. So 3 key words, and the first word is accompanist. Soloists know the importance of this role. The role of an accompanist is neutral but supportive. They take the lead from the other. In the same way chaplains meet on other people's ground, it is they who are at home. And you are starting where they are. This is the third space. You're starting where they are. The research says that amongst chaplains, missiology is articulated in terms of incarnation. It's about being there. It's about coming alongside. It's about being in the midst. The language of incarnation that chaplains employ ranges from being an expression of pastoral presence alongside people to a stronger articulation of incarnating the presence of God in particular situations. It's about accompanying people on a journey, even to the angry places. It's about being a comforter. It's about giving consolation. I'm sure those of you who are chaplains, these words will ring true for you. Now, the etymology of the word chaplain is really helpful here. An act of compassion in the 4th century by a French soldier called Martin is commonly used to illustrate the essence of chaplaincy. He cut his cloak in half, and he gave half to a beggar to offer warmth and comfort. And that night, he saw Jesus in a dream wearing the half cloak. And he heard Jesus say to the angels, "Here is Martin, the Roman soldier who is not baptized and who has clothed me." Martin left the army, was baptized, went to Poitiers in France to become a disciple of St. Hilary in the 4th century, a wise and pious bishop. And he became known as St. Martin of Tours. And general consensus suggests the first reference to the term chaplain derives from this story, as chaplain comes from the Latin word capella, which is a diminutive of cappa, which means cloak. And then St. Martin became a keeper of the cloak. Chaplains accompany people in hard times, and when no one else is there for them, they go the extra mile, thus living out the translation of lending one's coat. So, what is a chaplain? What really is a chaplain? Here we go. What is a chaplain? A chaplain is someone who interacts with people for their emotional and spiritual well-being. It's someone who offers confidential, non-judgmental support about all aspects of life and work. It is motivated by their faith to care for people and communities. A chaplain is a good listener. A chaplain is someone who values, supports, and encourages staff. A chaplain respects diversity of belief within the wider community and is a representative of the local church as a Christian chaplain. I was asked in the coffee break by someone whether they should do some more study when it comes to being a chaplain. I said no. Being a chaplain does not require theological education, but a living faith in Jesus Christ, a desire to make a difference in someone's life, a compassion for those in need, a little bit of spare time, I'm getting that word out today, aren't I? And a determination, perseverance, because it's a long and slow ministry, and sometimes you just have got to press on, trusting that Jesus has gone before you and prepared the way. We've already heard that training is important, but regular training like this is invaluable, I believe. You haven't got to do any major in-depth study. Being a chaplain is a tremendous privilege and joy. And when I left Derby, I was delighted and surprised to receive an album from all sorts of people, as you do when you finish a job. And in this album, there was some expressions of thanks and appreciation for the opportunity I had given to a number of chaplains to serve. And I thought you'd like just, this is what people have said, okay? So, and this is not about me, but about what it's like to be a chaplain. I've loved being privileged enough to be one of the chaplains. I felt the Spirit's drawing me to the whole idea when I first viewed your video message at a church meeting. How could I not, with you telling us how many doors God was opening for the chaplaincy movement? And another one. I just want to say a great big thank you for accepting me into the ministry of being a city centre chaplain. I never thought I would be accepted to serve the Lord in this area. It's been a humbling experience and one of fulfillment. I've been truly blessed, so loving the opportunity to serve Christ as a chaplain to the care home. I always receive more than I give out when ministering, and I've loved the training days, being refreshed and equipped. And the last one. Chaplaincy has been and still is a great joy to me. I'm a better person and closer to God for being involved as a chaplain. He was my oldest chaplain. Let me tell you, there's no age limit. There's no age limit to be a chaplain, but he was my oldest chaplain at 86 at the time. When I was chaplain at the city council, I often received emails or requests, could I meet with someone? So I thought you'd like to see what these are like as well. These are city council employees. I was wondering if I could book some time to see you for a chat. I have no real support or colleagues to talk to about how I'm feeling at work. When they do lend an ear, it's not supportive and is referred to as my well-being. And is there anything at home that makes you feel this way? I am in a great place mentally and at home, but work is stressful, undervalued, unsupportive. Would it be possible to meet up? I have had a back-to-work interview with my team leader, and we think I would benefit from seeing you. It's interesting, that one, because that's where someone's team leader has a conversation, realizes that they're not in the right relationship with this person in terms of an authority relationship, and they refer that person to a chaplain. I just heard about your chaplaincy service when it was publicized some 2 to 3 years ago. A culmination of issues in my life leads me now to seek some support. Can we please arrange a meeting? That's interesting too, because you see what's happened here. 2 or 3 years ago, someone heard about the chaplaincy. It may be they just saw me or one of my colleagues walking around in our jacket. I may have had a chat with them. I have no idea. But what they did was they logged it, didn't they? If ever I need to talk to someone, there's that chaplain around the place. And when the time came, that's when they made the contact. I'm experiencing problems with work and could do with some support. I'm trying to address the issues I'm facing. I want to be able to explain what I'm doing and why, and at the end of the meeting receive a prayer. It's great, isn't it? 2 weeks ago, I was shopping at M&S just down the road, and there's a lady there who's always very polite, and I always go to her counter, and she says, "Hello, how are you?" I always reply, "Fine, thanks, how are you?" And that's as far as it goes. We've all had those conversations, haven't we? But then 2 weeks ago, she didn't say fine. She said, "I'm really distressed." And her elderly mother is in some serious health issues and is struggling. And this lady is really, as we all do, you can't leave your problems at home, can you? She's taken her problems to work. And I said, "Can they support you here?" And she didn't think they could. And so I just said, "Well, I'm really concerned, and next time I come, I'll see how you're doing." So I went a couple of days ago, and she was there, and I had a chat with her. And I told her a little bit about me and my story and about the chaplaincy here, and would she like a chaplain, and she's going to think about it. You never know when the opportunities come, do you? You can never tell. The key word here is accompanying. And one way we did this was in our publicity in Derby. We produced some publicity. We actually produced some publicity together with the GP surgery where we were going to be at, because we wanted the publicity to be really fitting for that surgery. So we had to have buy-in from the NHS and from us, etc., etc. So we produced publicity. And in the end, we so liked it, we got rid of all our other publicity, and this has become our standard publicity. So that's the front page of the card. And this is the next page. Our chaplains provide a confidential pastoral listening service with spiritual care. Free for all staff experiencing grief, stress, anxiety, struggling with illness, making difficult decisions, or overwhelmed by life. The chaplain will listen to you without judgment, respecting your beliefs and experience. Please get in touch if you'd like to talk to me. And there's space there to put the chaplain's name. And we found that worked brilliantly. And the surgery, who had as much input as we did to the wording, loved it. And it continues to be used today. I mentioned GP chaplains and GP chaplaincy, and now I'm going to invite Susanna to interview Suzette.
So thank you for agreeing to be interviewed. So Suzette, you are in a GP chaplaincy, and in contrast to Russ, you have people coming to you for these one-to-one encounters. Where do you start?
Well, yes, so the GPs refer people into me. So I get there on a Friday morning, and they give me a list. And the person comes, I go and get them from the waiting room, and we sit together in a private room, and I say to them, I cannot access your notes. I do not write in your notes. I only know your name. And then I say their name. Susanna, tell me. And often the first thing that, well, they all say, I'm not religious, and I don't know why I'm here. That's fine. Tell me about you. Explain, describe what your life is. And that often will open up the conversation, and they start to tell me. And it is fantastic. I like TED. Tell me, explain, describe. It's just about you and the interest that I show, my body language probably. I want to listen. And I listen.
And they share.
And they share. They do share, most definitely, yes.
I'm going to ask the same questions I asked of Russ. So can you share with us the challenges of your role?
Yes, the challenge is to be able to hear them. Sometimes it's in the silence that I have to sit and hear them. Often it's in the anger, the anguish, the sorrow. But then I also, and believe me, we have laughed. We've laughed so loud that the ladies, the secretary in the next door room said, I heard you laughing. We were really laughing at life. And so the challenge is often to hear them. And I also think, though I can't fix everything, you know, I don't say to them what they should do. I actually think the word should be banished. I ask them, you know, what happens, what is in their lives in order for them to share and to find their way of how they're going to get to grips, overcome, and actually just be in this moment, because they've already come to the GP surgery. So often it's a health issue, but I would say it's bereavement, it's stress, mental health issues are the big one. And so it is a challenge to sit with somebody, particularly when they are very unwell. Yeah. It is a challenge.
Were there any other challenges you wanted to share?
The challenges, so I don't always get it right. I don't always get it right. You know, I can sit and I ask a question and I know in that moment I've said the wrong thing or I've asked the wrong thing. So it's knowing that, you know, I don't always get it right, but I'm alongside that person in that moment. And it's a privilege. I hear all sorts of things. And it's just wonderful to be with that person. The challenges are also to know where to put what I hear down. I think that's a really difficult one. When I was growing up, from a very Catholic background, my mother used to say to us, always place your burdens, your challenges, your worries at the foot of the cross. And I think it's really important to have that now. I was a nurse. When I was nursing, I would have supervision. But the challenge is being able to take what you hear and then to lay it down. And because otherwise you'll take it to your bed and it's not a good place. So that is a real challenge to know. And also the challenge that I may never see that person again. They may never come back. I may never know what will happen to them. And yet there are others, they come back on a regular basis. And it's, I'm waiting almost for the next episode. And they share with me what happened, what they did, what happened to them. And what a privilege that is to hear that story, that life. I think it's a fantastic thing. It's a privilege to be it.
Thank you. And could you share with us the joys of being a chaplain? I know you've touched on it, but...
Yeah, the joys is listening to people, to be with. I just like people. I'm interested. I think this is a joy for a stranger, somebody that has never seen me before, even the chap from the betting shop next door. Wait, hang on a minute, I'll just tell you this. And I hear about somebody's lives. What a joy that is. And it's just a privilege. And it's also humbling, because I think, my goodness, people's lives, I've had a fantastic life. God has been good. And so at this stage in my life, to hear that, to hear others, where I might say, I ask them, at 3 o'clock in the morning, when you get up, because, there are more toilets used at 3 o'clock in the morning than at any other time. I don't know who did that research. They tell me they're not always flushed, but you'll know that you get up around about 2:30 to 3:30. So I say to the person, it's 3 o'clock in the morning when you get up to use the loo and you can't get back to seat. Where are you? Who are you? What do you want? Tell me. You hear amazing things, absolutely amazing things. That is a joy. It can also be extremely sad too. But in the sadness, there is a joy. And for me, I place it at the foot of the cross and say, Lord, here it is, because I can't solve it. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much.
That's okay. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Please don't let that comment about the toilets be the only thing you remember from today. The second word is catalyst. Catalyst. In chemistry, we're told the catalyst is unaffected by the reaction that it helps initiate. But in common parlance, the idea of chaplain as catalyst is a powerful one. The chaplain is the agent for change, not in a revolutionary way, but because of an interaction with another person. So in Acts 17, Paul was in a city that loved talking about ideas, and people were keen to debate, but he addresses the people directly by drawing their attention to a statue they'd walk past so often it had become background noise. He uses it as a rhetorical, catalytic device to help them see it differently and beyond it to the one whom Paul wanted them to know, the God revealed in Jesus. A catalytic conversation, bringing about change in some, if not all. And phrases from the chaplaincy research reflects the idea of catalyst. The chaplain's role is in drawing back the veil to reveal the presence of God. Paul did this in Athens City Centre Chaplaincy. It's what chaplains do in all sectors. The catalyst makes a difference. It creates reactions. Chaplaincy supports people's intimation that there's more to life than meets the eye. It challenges secular materialism helping gain confidence in the possibility of God. When an Oxford University chaplain spoke with a member of the faculty who was not a Christian, he affirmed the chaplaincy by saying, "The chaplain changes the meaning of the institution." Chaplaincy challenges the institution to resist the notion that it's flat and secular. And this was powerfully brought home to me when I spent half a day at the Toyota factory in Derby. I was invited to discuss the possibility of appointing chaplains, and I discussed with senior HR managers who told me of the amazing support they give to their staff, and I was impressed. HR specialists with a remit for employee relations, team leaders given extensive training on problem solving, occupational health centre with a doctor on site 2 days a week, 2 full-time nurses, a physio each shift, 2 counsellors on site, Citizens Advice Bureau on site 1 day a week, funds provided for counselling, on-site nursery, private medical care for all employees and families. Wouldn't you want to go and work for Toyota? Amazing. But they concluded that even though they have all this, it is not enough. And they said, something is missing. And they acknowledged it was the belief in mystery, in faith, in spirituality that would come from the ministry of a chaplain. The catalyst makes a difference. It creates reactions, makes potential real, is an agent that provokes or speeds significant change or action. And I love this quote with a sort of chemical inclusion of the word explosion. There's an explosion of chaplaincy ministry from the community of faith to the community of work and play. Chaplaincy operates on the edge of the church, but at the heart of the gospel. It is a soft-skilled, inclusive, relational, and incarnational ministry offering spiritual support, pastoral care, and ethical questions in contemporary public spaces. That, to me, says it all. The third word is witness, although this didn't look very good as a witness, did it? In York Station, they were doing some building work around the chaplaincy office, and the message was, keep out. Witness is about bearing the testimony, seeing the unseen, interpreting and drawing out meaning within an event or encounter, and telling the story. Paul did this in Athens, not just by preaching a strange new teaching on resurrection, but by witnessing to the encounter between people, their daily life and surroundings, and drawing out of it an encounter with the living God. The chaplaincy research observed that nurturing discipleship is not language that's natural to chaplaincy. Hardly surprising, given the often transient nature of the encounter. But the research adds that chaplains identify as significant that their work is supporting people to explore faith. Witness is about being there, where appropriate, telling your story of faith. Because chaplaincy touches people, many who do not have a personal faith, who may have no link or interest in church. So it's important to acknowledge what was said a little bit earlier. The ministry of chaplain is not about evangelism. I like to think about it as, if you like, pre-evangelism. Expanding the notion of evangelism beyond Protestantism to include evangelism through action, not a message. Walking alongside people and being persistent with that. Being who we are by what we do, by what we say, by the support we show, by kindness and compassion. I think I'd go so far as to say that chaplaincy in many ways is pre-evangelism, because people are so far back today, aren't they, in their understanding of faith, even too far back often to benefit from attending a Christian basics course, and even further back is what Paul faced in Acts 17. You worship someone and don't know who it is. Chaplains help people know, in the midst of troubles, even a crisis, that they're loved and accepted, that there is hope, that there's a living God. And the role of a chaplain is to extend God's grace by care and hospitality as Jesus did. We still saw some folks come to faith. Not many, but nevertheless we did. And so as accompanists, catalysts, and witnesses, chaplains have the opportunity to be incarnations of God's love. With Paul, we know that some will scoff, but others will hear us again, and some will want to explore further. So here we see that chaplains, in different points of impact, chaplains speak to many people. Keeping a record is a means of charting the demographic of people the chaplains reach. We see that institutions want to have chaplains. An industry chaplain said to me, one of the evidences is the demand. People want us. Some businesses make donations to the cause because this is worth it and there is value here. In Derby, we managed to create 2 new income streams with the NHS through care in the community, when chaplains would join teams going into the homes alongside nurses and physios and so on, and also through GP chaplaincy. And we bring in today, I think it is, around £18,000 a year through this. And then the chair of a commercial business said the biggest impacts are the calming influences at work, and it allows religious faith into the workplace. I probably should add to that, and giving out chocolate. It is difficult for chaplains to quantify the impact of their work in the midst of the demand to provide evidence. Everyone today wants evidence, don't they? Is it worth it? But an undeniable measure is the countless stories of people who have been helped and are helped by the ministry of a chaplain. Many people feel completely overwhelmed and confused when going through difficulties. They feel raw, vulnerable, and uncertain, and that is why chaplaincy is such an essential ministry. Just going to buzz this on to there. Philip Sheldrake writes in The Spiritual City, scholars have noted that Jesus regularly pushed those closest to him away from familiar places toward places that were initially threatening, because the people in such places were marginal Gentiles or in some way other. We have discovered there are no-go areas. We go to the places that are missed out. Dr. Mladin from Theos writes, when we talk about chaplaincy, we are talking about a huge, growing, and significant phenomenon. We are rapidly approaching a position where people are more likely to encounter religion via a chaplain than any other way. And so, friends, that is why it's such a critical ministry. It's on the edge of the church and yet at the heart of the gospel. And that's a great position to be, for after all, Jesus was pushed out of the world onto a cross, journeying from the center to the edge. And as chaplains, we are prepared to make this journey, to serve on the edge. Yes, there's unpredictability there, maybe even darkness there, as people share their pain. But that's what we're prepared to do. I want to bring these points together now of accompanists, catalysts, and witnesses, and sum up authentic chaplaincy in this way. Authentic chaplaincy is, if the place does not belong to you, you're going in there. You are not why they come. They go to work not to see you. Everyone may not want you there. That's the reality. You're there as a guest. You're going out to where others already are. You regularly wander with intent. That's proactive. You respond to whatever. That's reactive. You switch between offering religious, spiritual, and pastoral care. A number of occasions I would meet with people from the city council for the maximum of an hour. Sometimes there would be no mention of Jesus, no mention of faith. I'm okay with that. You work with other faiths as peers when they might otherwise be the focus of your ministry. You ask, when did we, Lord? I'd like you to have a conversation again about this now. In what ways do the words accompanist, catalyst, and witness help you understand the ministry of a chaplain? One final time around your tables, please. So I messed up on something before. Okay, let's come together again. In a few moments, we're going to have a time for a Q&A, but I want to just finish this particular bit with a picture, a quote, and a story. And there's the picture. Do not go where the path may lead. Go instead where there is no path and leave a trail. And I like that. That's about being adventurers. That's about being explorers. That's about putting faith into action. That's about spelling faith, R-I-S-K, and going where others haven't gone. You may not be able to read this, but I will read it to you. It's a really helpful quote. The church gets into trouble whenever it thinks it's in the church business rather than the kingdom business. In the church business, we're concerned with church activities, religious behavior, and spiritual things. In the kingdom business, we're concerned with kingdom activities, all human behavior, and everything which God has made, visible and invisible. Church people think how to get people into church. Kingdom people think how to get the church into the world. Church people worry the world might change the church. Kingdom people work to see the church change the world. To me, that's chaplaincy in action. And then just a story that's happened when I was up in Derby, and a member of the congregation told me this story. She said to me how every Thursday she goes to the hairdresser. And she said that whenever she goes, they always talk to her. I gather that's what a lot of hairdressers like to chat. Is that right? It's a long time since I've been to one, as you may know. But they just talk and talk and talk, and they love talking to her. And then one day they said this to her. Every Thursday, did you know this? 2 city centre chaplains visit us. And it's been so helpful talking to them. And then he said, they're a godsend. I looked up this word. I knew the word. I looked it up. A godsend is a person who comes unexpectedly, but is particularly welcome and timely, as if sent by God. I love that story. And it's a great description of all followers of Jesus, but most certainly of chaplains. We're called to be a godsend. We thought it'd be good to have an opportunity for questions now and any sort of comment. And I told you earlier about one of my sons who said to our friend, why are you here? A story about the other one of the other sons, always had questions when he was young, or very young, maybe this was, I think, when he was 7, full of questions, never stopped asking questions, which is exciting. And then one day he said this, why is God called Peter? And we said, well, We don't think God is called Peter. Why do you ask? Well, how come in church we say, thanks Peter God? True story. Anyway, this is a time for questions. There are no questions that cannot be asked, or if you like, oh, that's a silly question, no one else will think that. A time for questions, and I'm going to ask Susanna, if I may, to come and take the microphone. This is your opportunity. It needn't be questions, it could be comments, it could be reflections. We've set some time aside for this because we believe this is really important. So over to you really to share reflections or ask questions now, and just raise a hand and then Susanna will come to you.
Thank you. In our group, we had a question about prayer and how that fits in with chaplaincy, and when it's appropriate to offer to pray for people, or is that something that we're just led, as we go through the meeting? And do you have advice on prayer beforehand? Yeah, prayer really, and how that fits in.
That's a really helpful question, thank you. I would say for the chaplain, before we went out, and one thing I've not said is that our chaplains often went out with other chaplains, and I like that model the most. Of course, it can't happen with, let's say, GP chaplaincy or in some sectors, but where we had chaplains that could go out with others, we did that because that's more supportive of each other, and chaplains would pray for each other and pray together and so on. So that's before going out. There have been times when I have prayed with people I've spoken to. They may have asked me, as in you saw in that comment from one of the people who said, end with a prayer. There have also been times when I've offered to pray for people, and to pray either, can I pray for you maybe tonight before I go to sleep? Is it okay, I'm going to say a prayer for you? Or it may be I say, can we pray together now? It's about wisdom, it's about discernment, it's about judgment, it's about sensing if this is the right thing. We are a guest. We have been invited into the conversation, into someone's life. I think we need to be cautious, but always ready. And in our training induction for new chaplains, and in my interview, when I interviewed chaplains, I would always make sure that someone felt comfortable to pray with someone. Not necessarily to pray up front in the building, but actually to pray one-to-one with someone, because it's a really important ministry. But I think we need to be listening carefully, both to the person and to the Lord, and then sense if the time is right. But I do encourage it.
So if we were approaching a company, the workplace, would we mention that we may well be offering to pray with people?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think we're offering pastoral support, spiritual support, any support we can. It's just, if you like, part of the package. And I think most companies, organizations will understand that prayer is part of the deal. But there's no need to mention that and highlight that. But it's a great question. Thank you so much.
Hi, thank you. This has been really stimulating and sort of buzzy, so thank you. We had a question on our table about where the line is, if you like, to do with, Russ said, in the police force, absolutely no proselytizing. That's not what this is, and you've explained that very fully, and I feel very comfortable with that. But I can just hear, thinking around people in my church, I can just hear them going, but why aren't we telling people about Jesus? Yeah. And it would just be really helpful to have a bit of an answer to that. Does that make sense? I don't know if that's something that other people may have thought about as well. I suppose it's something to do with the difference between mission and evangelizing, but it'd be really interesting to get your take on that.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. What I have said, I have not mentioned it today, but I will do so now. What I've said in terms of chaplaincy, I speak to you today as an evangelist, okay? There's nothing that's my greatest desire to see folks come to faith, and I've been involved in that by the grace of God over all the years of my ministry. But when it comes to chaplaincy, what I say is this: there is no hidden agenda. There are no strings attached. And I'm fine with that, because we do have a story to share. We are blessed with a hope in Christ that has changed our lives, but we're being invited into someone else's space. If we don't go there, who will fill that? So I think sometimes we need to be prepared in this ministry, as with other ministries too, to give without expecting anything in return. I don't know how it works in a lot of other ministries. I have been involved a little bit in food bank ministry. I don't think they insist on praying with people who they give a food parcel to. In my church in Derby, we hosted refugees and asylum seekers in partnership with the British Red Cross. We just welcomed them. If someone wanted to talk to us about faith or ask for prayer, we would do that. We had a debt ministry. We didn't insist on praying for people. I personally think it's quite a narrow view to say you can only do it if you can pray with someone or if you can tell them about Jesus. Because I think sometimes we need to be prepared to do it without that. But the blessings that come back to us, because the opportunities that come, are huge. But I hope that helps you. And hold on to the phrase, no strings attached, no hidden agenda. And think about other ministries in your church maybe to give examples to those who may have comment. There's not a hand here.
A question about practical and specialist help. Do you think it would be helpful and or appropriate if chaplains had a list of helplines, for example, debt advice, pregnancy advice, Samaritans, I mean, you could go on and on and on, the names, the crucial contacts, which could, if appropriate, be handed out?
I think it's a great idea, a great idea. Sometimes doing that from local contacts, they change all the time, so it can be difficult. But I personally, it's a great idea. I make it clear, and all our chaplains understood this, we are not counsellors. We're not, I mean, one or two of my chaplains were, but the majority of our chaplains are not counsellors. We're not trained as counsellors. We're not gifted as counsellors. We're there as listeners and supporters. And if people can get help in a crisis from a specialist organisation, that is wonderful. We can work in partnership with others. We don't want to be exclusive in any way. So I love the idea.
I just want to say, never underestimate the power of prayer. I do healing on the streets as well as town chaplaincy. And doing that, they suggest that you pray for everyone that you've had an encounter with for 7 days. So even if you don't need to know the person's name even, but try and write something down so that you can pray for them for 7 days. You never know what's going to happen.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful. There's a question over here.
If it's okay, I just want to go back to the person who said about churches saying we need to be telling people about Jesus. When we go out, we are taking his Holy Spirit with us. And even if we're not mentioning by name, he's actually with us. And sometimes that's what touches other people, even without them being aware. So we're not mentioning him, but we know and trust that my Spirit is with us.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Over here, Susanna.
I was just thinking, when you were talking about, and lots of people have said it this morning, all the things that they hear and how humbling it is, but also how it can be really sad. Is there an opportunity for chaplains to offload to someone? Is there like a procedure that you have where they can talk through some of the things?
Yeah, that's really important. Thank you so much. All our chaplains had a mentor, and all the chaplains would meet with their mentor every 6 weeks, because it's really important. We heard earlier from Suzette about, you've got to sort of have boundaries. which is really critical. So there was that structure within our organisation. And our GP chaplains also had supervision and so on. So all that was in place. And one more thing just associated with that. Because some of the situations people faced are quite testing and difficult, we also gave some sector-specific training that actually helped develop people's understanding. I will always remember our social care chaplains. Those are chaplains in the nursing homes, care homes and so on. And where we're all aware of the increasing problem with dementia and Alzheimer's and so on. We actually had 2 speakers come to a sector-specific training for our social care chaplains, and one of the 2 speakers, a GP with dementia. And it was a really powerful time. So I think we need to do everything we can to resource our chaplains and build life into them. So it's helpful, and I'm glad you asked that question. So every 6 weeks, our chaplains would meet with a mentor just to pray, to debrief, to check in, how's it going? Because I've always been concerned that chaplains can be isolated. And that's why, where possible, our chaplains went out with others so they wouldn't be on their own. Thank you for your question.
Just want to give a little encouragement to 2 people who have asked questions already. The lady over here was asking about praying with people. I've found that you've got someone talking to you, and you never know what's going to come out of their mouths, what their situation is. You can then sort of, within yourself, actually pray quietly and ask the Holy Spirit to guide you, because that person might need prayer and might be scared to ask for it, but the prayer might frighten them away and they won't unload themselves. So you've got to be very careful there. And the other lady over there was asking about lists. Yes, it's very important to be able to sort of say to somebody, and it's an opportunity to get to see them again, is to say, I understand what you're looking for. You need help from A, B or C. Can we meet again in a few days or next week? And I'll have a list of those organisations for you. Especially if it's somebody's, for example, somebody might have somebody in prison and they don't know how to get hold of the prison chaplain at that particular prison. So you can get those details for them. And it's a chance to get them back and to help them with the issue that's going through the family at that time.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Susanna over there.
This is just because Ginny asked the question, and we're in Guildford. Every chaplain in the Guildford setup has a mentor, for the very reason that you asked the question.
Good, thank you.
Well, thank you, first of all, for a wonderful event, very informative. You talked about training and no need for theological training, which is a great relief. But what training is envisaged or needed?
Well, maybe that's a question that at the end Susanna could pick up on. I mean, I'm here, if you like, as the speaker today, and I do have a role with Guildford Town Centre Chaplaincy. I meet with Noel every month, and I'm supporting them. But I can't speak for them, but I know they want to continue training their chaplains. But I'll let Noel or Susanna answer that a little bit later. Some hands over here.
I think it's obvious, but I just wondered where we stand on confidentiality.
Thank you for that question. Yes, all our chaplains are in our induction training. They were always taught and explained about the whole confidentiality issue. What is shared is confidential unless there are any safeguarding concerns. And I'm sure that's a similar mandate that's given to the chaplains here. The chaplains that I was meeting with, even if I was mentoring them, I would not ask for details of conversations. I would not even need to know who they have met with. But once something begins to cross a line, when you begin to think there are safeguarding issues here, then it needs to be addressed. And we did have situations like that that I was involved in, and then the safeguarding department of Derby Diocese were involved in as well. But I don't need to know what's going on, but I did need to know if there were safeguarding issues. I hope that helps on that one. Thank you for raising that question. Susanna down here.
I was just wondering if you know anything about the national landscape currently for like roles, like full-time paid roles for lay people within chaplaincy and what that looks like. And alongside that, kind of denominationally, what denominations are offering in terms of training for chaplaincy. Thanks.
I'm not up to date on that. I'm happy to have a conversation with you after, if that's okay. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm probably a bit of the odd man out here. I'm a Jewish chaplain for the police. Just further to what Russ was saying, we are a very mixed bag, people of all faiths. The key word, I think, being faith, and that's what drives us and why we commit to chaplaincy. We have a check-in, as you were saying, like mentor. We have our leader is a paid member working for Surrey and Sussex Police, and within that we have a team now of about 40 volunteer chaplains, and it's very varied, and so much of what Paul's been saying today really resonates. So I just really wanted to add that yes, we're sitting in a beautiful church and we're hearing all the, but actually chaplaincy can come from all areas and infiltrate all parts of the community that we live in and society we live in. And it's wonderful, Paul, especially in today's time that we work together regardless of which particular altar we are praying at. But, so thank you very much. But a little plug for the police.
No, I mean, that's great. And I did make a point of welcoming Tina before the session started, because I am a Jewish believer in Jesus, and so we have that in common as well. Another question.
It's actually to answer the question about trained. Up until recently, paid chaplains are generally ordained people, if they're Christian. Don't know about other beliefs. But there is now a college, and I can't remember the name of it, but it 24/7, as in the prayer 24/7.
Waverley College, yeah.
Waverley College. Waverley College does courses for people to train as chaplains, so that people don't have to go through the ordination route. And that's, you've done it.
Thank you for that, yeah. Okay, one more question in the front here. Our last question, if we can.
Yes, thank you, Paul. I resonate. I think we as a town chaplaincy, we're from Basingstoke. There's a group of us from Basingstoke, and I think we would resonate with almost everything that you have said. One of our main challenges at the moment is getting more chaplains, because we want to go into more of those town areas, those areas that you illustrated. We would love to do that. But when we talk to people in our churches, so many people say, oh, I couldn't do that, I couldn't do that. So have you got any tips on just how to reach out and find more chaplains, or advice?
Well, welcome to our Basingstoke friends, that's great. And also those from Bracknell and Staines and everywhere else as well who've come today. It's a really important point, and recruitment is a big challenge. I do personally think that the best recruiters for chaplains are chaplains. I really believe that. And I think if everyone here who is at the moment a chaplain, whether in Guildford or elsewhere, if you are a chaplain and you're able to find a friend, meet with a friend, discuss this with a friend, and ask them to shadow you when you go out, come with you, learn from you, see what they think about it, I think you'll begin to see people signing up. Growth in Derby and Derbyshire was slow. I've given you in a very sort of brief time what happened over a number of years. But to begin with, it was very slow. Our training day to begin with was around a table like this, just half a dozen of us. And then it got more and more. But I do think it's up to the chaplains. We produced literature, we produced videos. None of it is unworthy or wasted, but it's not the best. I really think finding someone to go with you, that was the thing that really helped people think, I could do this actually. I think the fear is, I don't know enough, I can't answer all the questions, I might be lost for words. How did you do that? So I'd invite you to take a friend to go with you and shadow you and try it out. Okay? There are other answers I give, but I think that to me was the way that worked the best. Actually, the other way that worked, that's the best way. The other way that worked was inviting prospective chaplains or inquirers to training days like this. And if you're sitting here today and you're not a chaplain, and you came to think a little bit about it, and I know there are some like that because I spoke to you over coffee, I hope today's warmed your heart a little bit and increased your desire to know more or to get involved. So I think training days like this and shadowing a chaplain are the two best ways that we've found to grow our chaplains. Thank you for the question. Okay, as we come towards the close, we're doing very well with time. I'd like you to think about these three questions. What will you take away? What has been encouraging? And what has been challenging? And I think what I'd like is, just for 2 or 3 minutes, if we just do that personally, individually, we think for ourselves, you may want to write it down, what are you going away with? And then we can have a few moments to share. Okay, shall we draw our conversations to a close? There's always that pause to get going in conversation, and it's always hard to get you to stop. There you go. I'm going to hand over to Susanna, who leads the piece of work within GTCC, developing volunteer chaplains.
Thank you, Paul. I think we will all agree it's been a real privilege to have you here today. Is this better? Is that better? Yeah. I was saying it's been a real privilege to have Paul with us today, and we love the fact that he has retired to Guildford, and we get to benefit from having him here with us. So yes, I thought I would just give you a very brief sort of summary of what the chaplaincy does here in Guildford, an update on where our chaplains are working at the moment, and just a few thoughts on community and chaplaincy. So Volunteer Chaplains is one of 3 projects run by Guildford Town Centre Chaplaincy. We have our Street Angels, who go out on a Friday and Saturday night and early hours of the morning. And we have Community Angels, which is our befriending project. But since it started 16 years ago, GTCC has been sending out chaplains to different places across the town. But I think it's probably in the last 2 years that we have had dedicated project coordinator, which is me. And so we're continuing to send people out to be a caring, listening presence for our town. And this was in response to the openness, I suppose, post-COVID, to the idea of chaplaincy, an awareness or an understanding maybe of the value of listening, and a recognition of the value when people are really heard. So with me having these 2 days a week, it means we have more time to recruit more volunteers. I can sort of spread the word with more placements, and we can host events like this. So where are our chaplains working at the moment? We have someone in the leisure sector supporting staff in a nightclub. We support health. You heard from Suzette. We have chaplains going out to GP surgeries. We support the homeless, the elderly, police. We're in the town centre of St Mary's with Ros. And we're currently working with a group of businesses to see how we can best support them. We're actively looking for someone to go into a large state secondary school, and we have a placement waiting for someone with one of our local bus companies. And we're expanding the number of GP chaplains. So we are still small, but I think the message from Paul and what we want to communicate really is that the possibilities are endless and really are just limited by the number of volunteers that we have. We're very keen that all our placements are sustainable. We're into creating long-lasting relationships. And so we work very closely with people who are interested in becoming a volunteer. We work closely with you to work out, where your interests lie, where are your passions, where are you going to be a best fit, even if that means you stepping out of your comfort zone. And no two placements are the same, so you sometimes have to be willing to think outside the box. How is it going to work? How are we going to make it work for them? And so we work closely with placements beforehand, and then it evolves. It's an ongoing relationship, so we have regular reviews with them. I know that some of you are here today because there is just something about chaplaincy that has got you excited, that you are interested in. So please do use today as an opportunity to ask those questions. There is a wealth of experience in this room. We've got people who are just at the start and then people that have been doing it for decades. So please do use today as an opportunity. Do talk to one of our volunteers. They get a uniform, Paul. They have the maroon fleeces, so please do talk to them. And of course, you can always contact me, and there are leaflets at the back. Do take one as you leave today. And then just a few words on community. We are very aware that our chaplains are lone workers, a lot of them. You're going out on your own, and so we intentionally want to create opportunities for you to be able to come together, and whether that is through supervision, through training, social events, and praying together. And we have just celebrated our first year anniversary of monthly prayer meetings, which we hold at St Mary's, first Tuesday of the month. And we come together for short, informal prayer, a chance to have a coffee, a chance to have a chat, and to pray for our town and the work of the chaplaincy. I think today, though, this is not just about a community for GTCC. We're very aware, I think the number of you that are here today, the distance that some of you have travelled to be here, shows that there is an interest in creating something wider. Maybe I've heard the word network. I've heard, are you going to be doing this again? So one of the things I'm going to be asking in a minute is for you to complete a feedback form. And if you are interested in maybe this being an annual event, we would really like to know about that and to see if that is something that we could do for the future for you. We want people to go away, to feel encouraged, to feel that they have received some training and to connect with others. So before I ask you to complete the form, I just wanted to close by reading some quotes from some people that have benefited from having time with one of our chaplains. And this is really not just to encourage those who will know that it was their clients that made these comments, but it's really to encourage all of you who are out there giving your time because it works. Thank you for listening. It's helped me to think more clearly. I feel so much better having got all that off my chest. This is my safe place. This is really helping me manage my anxiety. Thank you. And it's been so helpful. I feel as if I'm okay to leave and can make room for someone else who needs this. So it's very simple. It's listening, and it is powerful. And this is the impact that you can have either as a chaplain, as you're doing, or if you become a chaplain. Thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for making the effort to come. It is great to have so many of you here. I'm going to give you, how long can I give you? I can give you 5 minutes just to have a think about and answer the questions on your feedback form that will be on your table, and then I will be handing over to Noelle to close.
I'm hoping you've all had enough time to fill in your forms. I think Susanna might come round and collect them. Would that be a good idea? Please don't rush off. We have got some amazing food and sandwiches and things that are going to be provided for you. It's an opportunity to network and chat to each other and maybe think through some of the things that you've heard this morning. I just wanted to say a few things from my point of view as Principal Chaplain for Guildford Town Centre Chaplaincy. It's the best job in the world, but I've got it, I'm sorry. But it's a place of huge privilege. I get to talk to people throughout the town. I speak to people at the university, youngsters, the homeless, the council, I go along to pub watch, I'm involved in the business community, and the churches as well in the mix, and all those things. And it's just a massive privilege, and doors seem to open with chaplaincy. So I would encourage you in thinking about it. Now, some of your questions, you were asking some questions of Paul, and I thought I'd give you some answers that are specific perhaps to our chaplaincy, but maybe you'd like to take away with you. Prayer. When I encourage our chaplains, they think I'm a bit odd. They think I must be the most or the least prayerful person on the planet. But I think we go as chaplains, we don't want to be putting something on people's shoulders. But I would say, if it's appropriate, do pray, but keep it to about 2 lines, keep it short, because actually the people that you're meeting often have no experience of Christian spirituality or anything. They don't know what prayer's about, so you don't want to frighten them. Or to say, do you know what, would you mind if I prayed for you this week when I'm saying my prayers? Or before you go into your location, I always pray before I go. Because I know I'm so hopeless. I need God. So I'll often sort of go, oh Lord, please give me the right words. Help me to listen, things like that. So it's the prayer almost around the time that you're spending with people that I think is really crucial and important. Now at GTCC, although we don't do in-depth theological training, we do have a training session. What we found is our chaplains, I'm going to be very brave and say, they're a funny lot. They might shoot me down now, but they're a funny lot, because what's so lovely about them is there's just such a mix of personalities, backgrounds, passions, and probably if you're going to put people in a room, you wouldn't put our chaplains in a room together. But do you know what? It works. It's great. And they each bring something that is special. So we do train them. We don't spend hours and hours and days in training them in background, because most chaplains want to get out there and do the work, don't they? So hence we do this kind of ongoing training at different points. But we want to get our chaplains out there starting the work. We do supervision, as Susanna said. We have people that supervise our chaplains, which is amazing. Susanna and myself are always available for them if they come across something they feel they need support and need help with. We do cover all our safeguarding. We do DBS checks. We do get our chaplains to fill in a questionnaire before they put themselves forward for chaplaincy. We do look for them to be doing something in their home church as well. So, you know, they're not sort of lone rangers, but actually they've got some roots in a Christian community. So we would be looking for things like that. What I would say is sometimes people are fearful that if someone becomes a chaplain outside of the church, that you lose their skills and giftings in the church. What we've actually found is that our chaplains bring something back into your church communities, into the faith communities that you've come from. And it brings something extra, a different dimension. And so it doesn't take away, it actually adds. So I would just encourage you with that. You have a wider perspective and you bring something into the communities, not only where you're doing your chaplaincy, but where you're being sent out from. So just to finish, because I know not everyone lives in Guildford, it's got Basingstoke and all kinds of places, but if there's anything we can do to help here in Guildford, do get in contact with us, because we believe very much in being generous and sharing. So we will help you and try and be as generous and sharing as we can. It might be with some of our leaflets, some of our wording, some of our documentation, if you're thinking about setting up a chaplaincy, just to give you some guidelines, something to work on so you're not starting from scratch. We love to be generous. We like to give it away as well. Because it's not about us, it's not about building our kingdom, it's about building God's kingdom and blessing those around us. You'll be pleased to know I'm finishing just about. Paul has written me a note, but I'd already been told this, that the slides, we will send you a link to them if you ask for them. We will be sending out some information after this, just sort of giving a little bit of a recap on things that have happened this morning. I believe some of the talks have been filmed, have they? So we might be able to give you a link to the talks if that would be helpful for you. There's a couple of things that you might have come across. These are our chaplaincy leaflets that we kind of give to anyone and everyone. There's some at the back. If you want to take one away with you, please do. You filled in the questionnaire, so I don't need to mention that. You might have seen the angel ascent forms on your desks. We're doing a sponsored climb up and down the cathedral steps. If anyone has never been to the top of the cathedral, you get a wonderful view there. Maybe you want to join us and actually be sponsored to do that. Or if you'd like to sponsor us, some of our angels, that would be wonderful. So there's links there. Today, we wanted to give this to you as a free gift, to say thank you for all the work that you all do in so many different ways. And we hope that we will meet again with you. So thank you for being here today. Can we just give a round of applause to Paul, who's been incredible. Thank you, Paul. We are really pleased that you retired to Guildford, because you seem to retire just at the right moment, which is fantastic. And sort of thanks to our caterers and everyone that's been behind the scenes, because this has been so easy to bring together. Susanna won't agree with me, because she's done all the work. But it really, it's just really felt like a team effort, and I'm so grateful for that. So, just before we have our food, let us pray. You, each one of you here, are blessed to be a blessing. Therefore, go into all the world to be good news, to bless a world in need of love, attention, and care. May your chaplaincy ministry grow and flourish. May others receive you into their community. May you be known for your love and good deeds. So may God's Father love God. So may the Father's love fill you. May the Son's example inspire you. And may the Spirit's life empower you. In the name of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Amen. And just a final prayer. Heavenly Father, we do thank you for being able to meet together today. And we just thank you for the food that's been provided now. May you bless it to us and us to your service. Amen. Thank you. You'll see some lovely sandwiches on the side.